Hi, this is Dr. B, and in this video, I'll discuss how we use data visualization and research and how to adapt data visualizations for a reader. There are two phases of data analysis: exploratory analysis and explanatory analysis. In the exploratory phase, we use visualization to figure out what the data may be saying. We might visualize the data multiple ways to see what patterns or trends may emerge. In a sense, we're playing around with the data. It's best to approach this phase with an open mind and no real expectations of what you may find, and be open to visualizing the data in different ways so you don't miss anything. Explanatory analysis is reader-oriented. In this phase, we purposely choose and design data visualizations to communicate a specific insight from the data. We don't show the reader the raw data and all the different visualizations. We purposely choose those that illustrate the pattern or trend we've identified. For example, I was one of the researchers who worked on this particular project, and I generated many of these graphs. For over 4 years, I ran weekly assays and generated these graphs, yet only one is published here. That's because we choose a representative data visualization and we aggregate data to illustrate our findings. There's no way that we could fit years and years of graphs in a single paper, and even if we did, most readers wouldn't want to read them. So, exploratory analysis is researcher-oriented, and explanatory analysis is audience-oriented. We use data visualization in different ways: to explore data in the first place and to communicate a specific insight in the second. As a reminder, there are different ways to visualize data. Most people are familiar with the types of visualizations we use for quantitative data: pie charts, bar charts, line graphs, etc. The important thing is to pick the right type of visualization for the right function. For example, if you want to show part to whole, don't pick a line graph. Similarly, if you want to show change over time, don't pick a pie graph. You can learn more about each type of data visualization by clicking here. Here, you can explore different functions and the different data visualizations for each one. By clicking on each of these visualizations, you can learn more about them. Qualitative data is a bit harder to visualize. I like to think of this as converting text to visuals. We can use qualitative data to illustrate various types of relationships and patterns. Word clouds, concept maps, flowcharts, etc. are common qualitative data visualizations. The point of qualitative data visualization is the same as quantitative: to identify patterns, relationships, or trends and communicate these to a reader. Let's look at a couple of examples of data visualization. Here's a cool visualization and animation of sports results. In essence, this is a type of quantitative data. Even though this isn't a scientific experiment and involves the manipulation of variables, this type of data represents something that can be measured or counted. In this example, it's the score and time. Note here that the designer created a visualization to show specific relationships in the data: the relationship of one team to another across halves and over time. Sometimes traditional data viz doesn't communicate the relationships that we've discovered effectively, and we may need to design our own or find creative ways of communicating that insight. This visualization is probably the final one in a long process of exploratory analysis and playing around with visualization until it communicated the relationship that the designer saw. Here's an example of a qualitative data visualization. This shows the type of identifiers used in novels for characters described as men and characters described as women, to show the differences in how each character is identified. This is not quantitative data, but shows an important relationship. This type of visualization works because it shows context and it's interesting. It gets the point across more effectively than something like a table or a chart. Okay, so data visualization is an important research tool, and it's an important communication tool. When we use data visualization for communication, we want to focus on data storytelling and less on visualization. So what's the difference? Data visualization is simply the act of turning numbers or other information into a graphic representation. Data storytelling is designing that visualization in a way that effectively communicates a specific insight to a reader. Data storytelling is persuasive. It focuses the reader's attention on a specific insight. Some people feel uncomfortable with this idea because they want to believe that data is objective, especially in the sciences. However, as the readings this week discuss, data is never objective. It's collected by humans using human tools and methods. It's interpreted by humans and acted on by humans. Data is always persuasive to one degree or another. Even in the sciences, we use data as evidence of our methods. We're trying to convince the reader of our conclusions. Persuasion does not mean unethical, but I'll discuss this more in another video. So why do we care about telling a story, especially in science or research writing? Remember that in technical and professional writing, we want to enable a busy reader to make a decision, complete a task, or take an action. People will only be able to do so if they recognize that something is relevant and if they care. This is what stories do. They engage our senses, they make us interested, they make us care so we can act. The key here is that visualizing your data is only the first step. Once you have played with your data and identified the pattern, trend, or relationship you think it's showing, it's time to develop what Nancy Duarte calls a data POV. I love this metaphor because as researchers and writers, we have context for what our data is telling us. We know what's going on, and when we look at it, we have that frame of reference. Our reader doesn't. They didn't design the study or collect the data or spend hours looking at it. What we need to do is design the data visualization so they see what we see. We need to use design to encode our point of view. You can do this by adding design elements and annotating your data visualization. Design elements like size, bolding, color, shape, white space, etc. can help to create an information hierarchy and focus your reader's attention. Knaflic, in Storytelling with Data, calls this pre-attentive attributes. This means that we can focus our reader's attention before they even start reading. Annotation is the act of encoding your insights onto a data viz by labeling important information. We can highlight specific data points to call our reader's attention to them, or overlay text to identify patterns, or zoom in and out of important parts of the graphs. There are many ways to use design and text to add insight to graphs and convert a data viz to a data story. So how do you choose? Keep the reader in mind. What is it that you want them to see, think, or do? Let's look at two examples. In this article, The Guardian writes about a number of people migrating to the U.S. border and the dangers they face. In this visualization, they've added a dark-colored bar here as a pre-attentive attribute to direct the reader's attention to the record number of encounters at the border. They've also added text labels to help communicate the specific If you'd like to know more about data storytelling, I recommend these books. They're not programming or software oriented, and they're very accessible to anyone who's interested in data visualizations. Revising a data visualization into an effective story is difficult, and it's a skill we'll practice with our 2 data visualization presentations. The blog Storytelling with Data has a great post that illustrates how to do this. I recommend using this post as a tutorial, and I'll offer guidance in future slides as well. That's all for now. If you have any questions, please hit me up on the discussion forums or reach out over email.